Well, I found it pretty interesting thinking about James Webb Space Telescope and how well it's seeing out into the early universe, and things aren't jiving up with the Big Bang. But no, I do believe in science. I'm a STEMS guy myself, studied biology mostly. But one thing I'm noticing is like Rene Descartes, his first thing was after they spotted mountains on the moon and spots on the sun and Galileo's telescope, and started to contradict everything the church was saying to be true at that time when everything was supposed to be perfect crystalline spheres. He began to doubt everything to be true until he could prove to his own self through logic, beyond any reasonable doubt, to be true to himself. So the first thing he thought was, well, I have this very thought in my mind, whether it's this world is an illusion, or my body exists, or if everything was created, or if some demon's making me hallucinate, I can't doubt the fact that I'm having this thought right now. Therefore, I think, therefore I am. But the second thing he came up with, beyond any reasonable doubt to himself to be true, just using logic, was the fact that, well, then what is all this? Like, did it come from something that came from something before that, some creator or some hallucination by some demon? So the second thing he proved to himself, logically to himself, was that there had to have been some kind of deity, whether it be a demon or some kind of god. But beyond that, what I'm seeing is something similar right now where, there's that potential where we go and look back to the early parts of the universe with the James Webb, and what if galaxies are still perfectly well developed and formed, and shortly after the Big Bang timeline, and what's that going to do with the scientific community in the event that maybe this universe has been around a lot more than 14.5 billion years?
I really doubt it. I mean, the galaxies we're finding are 700 million years after the Big Bang, after the universe began to expand. So, the galaxies we found are only, I think they were only 50, maybe 100 million years older than the oldest galaxies. So perhaps the universe is that much older, which really isn't much. I mean, that would be whatever 100, whatever one. It's a really small percent. It's way less than 1%. So yeah, I mean, maybe the universe is older than we think it is. That would be exciting.
Yeah, I think it would still be playing time to form large super hydrogen giants that early on. What I'm thinking is, we try to use science to prove a lot of metaphysical things. But the problem with science is, and like I said, I love science. I'm a scientist myself, but it's been founded on a couple of big assumptions. One of them being is that the laws of physics that we know today have always been the same. And the other one is that, what if this is all a simulation? Not likely, but what if this universe really doesn't exist and it's all in our head? Not, like I said, big assumption there, but that's one of the assumptions that science has. The other assumption...
That the universe is...
Oh,
what?
Like I said...
There's no assumption in science that the universe is or is not a simulation.
No, it's one of the founding principles of science is that the laws of physics have always been the same.
Yeah, I agree with that.
That hasn't been changed. Okay.
Yeah.
So...
But the other thing you said was something about us being a simulation. That's not a...
Oh, I mean,
the assumptions of science are that
if?
the universe operates according to natural law and is therefore intelligible, that the forces in operation today are the same as the forces that operated in the past. And generally, you can insert some extra things here, but generally that, divine intervention or whatever is never an acceptable cause for any event that's ever happened. There's probably a few other things. I used to have these written down, but those are the main ones.
Well, I was thinking about, but going back to Rene Descartes and his second question that he had, is there a scientific test, statistical or real, to test, to accept or fail to accept the null hypothesis that this is all a simulation, some demons making us hallucinate?
No.
No, exactly. So this is under umbrella of philosophy, you have logic, you have science, you have metaphysics, and all of them are designed to try and reach the same point, like trying to understand what's real in the universe and what's right and real. But to use science to try and explain the metaphysical is like going to a Portuguese class trying to speak Russian and trying to get someplace, because until you can actually create a test to prove how much purpose went into something, you can't prove how or why we exist in the first place. So that just comes down to faith. So I believe in evolution. I've seen
faith
it happen.
In what?
Faith in what happens after, why, what happens when we die, what's the creation, what's the existence, if it's all random.
Wait, what does this have to do with science or whether or not we live in a simulation?
What I'm saying is there are metaphysical questions that can't be explained with science until you create a test for it.
Sure.
All right. So, I've seen evolution happen in a petri dish. I've seen evolution of speciation happen in introduced species into a lake of fish, and then they turn to a different species at the bottom of the lake, and they turn to a different species at the top of the lake. So it happens, but I mean, it could also be true that, presuming there is a God, that he's still creating. Why would he just make everything and then just stop?
So you believe in spontaneous generation?
I believe that there's lots of probabilities and chances. You look at the course of how long this Earth has been going around, and I do agree it's been billions of years. There's lots of opportunities for mutations, especially what's on the microbiological level, where these probabilities can happen billions of times a second with all these different organisms having those opportunities to spawn new generations that then self-replicate, and now you have a new species. I think it's possible for evolution to slowly change traits little by little to the point where they branch off and skew so far apart that they can't mate with each other, and then they become their own species. That's what I believe. But to say that God doesn't
That has
have
nothing
a
to
hand
do
in
with
that,
what you said earlier. You said, why couldn't God just keep creating life?
well, through those actions, like he would let it happen. So
Why
yeah.
are we bringing this up?
Oh, because I just joined the conversation and I was very interested in the topic, and of course, like, I haven't watched it from the start, so I'm just talking about what my thoughts are.
Yes. I see all you Parker people. I'm having a conversation though. Thank you for being here. Yeah, I mean, I can't tell if we're arguing or just listing hypotheticals and talking about the problems of hard solipsism. I just don't know what's going on.
So, I guess I'm just talking. Obviously, these are things that I had questions about. So I'm kind of more wanting to understand your perspective on things, because I do have questions all the time about this stuff, and I joined because I wanted to get that feedback and get some understanding from what I perceived was a pretty good audience and pretty supportive.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't really heard any questions. I don't know what to tell you.
Okay, do you believe there's a higher power or some kind of God?
No,
What's your evidence?
there is no evidence. That's why I don't believe.
But are you basing it off of science?
No, I'm basing it off of the lack of evidence.
Okay, but the lack of evidence is based off of science?
The lack of evidence is, I wouldn't say it's based in science. I mean, you could argue that science has never gathered any supporting evidence for a God, I guess, but I regard God as being outside the realm of scientific inquiry anyways. But they're just I just find no evidence of any gods or any miracles ever happening or anything like that.
But if you use logic, or just the following of the questions, you can't use science, the method of science, to try and prove a metaphysical question unless you have a test for it, which there's no test to prove how much planning and purpose went into anything. Then there's no way to use science to prove that God does exist. So there's the faith part. The faith is that we until recently, when we were able to actually visually see a black hole, it was a theory. We rationalized based on stars orbiting around nothing that there had to be a significant amount of mass there, but we weren't able to see it. Now the faith for me comes from the fact that I see God working through other people.
Faith in black holes. We had like extremely sophisticated mathematical models that described these objects that can exist.
Yes, but it was a theory until we were actually able to see it with a telescope.
Yeah, but I wouldn't call it faith at all.
So, what would you say about the people who've documented actually dying on a operating table and what they witnessed before they were resuscitated?
There are a few of these stories out there. I've never read into any of the particular ones, but I know that when they try to do this in controlled situations, they never get any interesting results at all.
So what if death is like before you're born? Just goes on forever and you have no recollection of it whatsoever.
What if?
Yeah.
So that's what if? Then I have no response to that. If that's what it is, then that's what it is. There could never, I don't see how there could ever be a justification in believing it. And it would be, the information is inaccessible to us because you would never remember it. So I just find it not very, it's not that it's not interesting, but it has no use at all, as far as I can tell.
That's the Epicurean philosophy, which is pretty interesting because they understood that the only thing they could actually prove to be true was that life is happening right now. Whether death is like before you're born, goes on forever, they understood that how important and valuable this point between two infinite timelines was, and they measured everything by how good things made them feel, and they measured quality of worth by how good it made them feel, understanding that some pain long-term equaling good, such as working out, was a good thing, and some things that made you feel good for the long term made you feel bad, like drinking and have excess made you feel that was bad. I thought that was an interesting philosophy. What do you think about at least just the existence, that the benefit of having a spiritual relationship with something, understanding that when something bad happens that you can't control, that either good is going to come out of it, or there was a reason for it, or you're not alone when you're all alone.
Okay, those are three very different things. The first thing you said was karma, and I think karma, the idea of karma is, I think that can be way more detrimental, because what it does is it leads people to sit around saying things like, I'm just going to leave it in the hands of God, which is to take the calculated, it's to make the calculated decision that you're not going to do anything in the hope that things will fall into place for you, because you're convinced that something is going to change the universe in a way that works for you. So I can't stand when I hear people talk like that. I don't get into their business and tell them what to do, but I think that they're doing themselves absolutely no favor. The idea that nobody has to suffer alone. I mean, that's that that's just a fact. I mean, we all have our own lives, but everybody knows somebody that has died of cancer or a car accident or has lost a child or had a breakup or a divorce or something like that. So, and then I don't remember what the other thing was.
Oh, so that when bad things happen, good will come out of it. That
That
it
was the
happened
first
for a
thing.
reason. Yep.
Oh yeah,
So
things happen for a reason. So, again, to me, that kind of attitude is taking a calculated risk at, or at, why did I say calculated risk? To me, that's like deliberately, that leads to people deliberately not doing anything about serious issues. Like, I don't know, in America, kids get shot at school. The only other place in the world that happens is Afghanistan that I'm aware of. And we just keep lobbing thoughts and prayers. And there are people that say, well, I believe that there will be justice in the next life. And they don't do anything about the unbearable sufferings in this life. Most of that's because people that write checks for them tell them not to, and they're a bunch of corporate whores, so they'll do exactly what they tell them. So
yeah.